Okay, so if I say 5 times 3, you say the answer is 15, right? 5 times 3, 15. But in the new Common Core testing, one student on the test, the way they teach it, wrote 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 15. Makes sense, right? But the teacher marked it wrong. How is that even possible? Now, our child is long in college now, so we're not part of this Common Core, but I can understand the frustration of some parents and why their students, or why they don't want their students involved in this, because this is wrong. If it would have said 3 times 5, this answer would have been right, but because the test question read 5 times 3, the student should have written 3 plus 3 plus 3, 5 times equals 15, because it reads 5 times 3. Now, I guess the reason for this is this will teach kids when they're younger, because this was on a 3rd grade Common Core math test. It will teach them when they get older the more complicated. So it's 5 groups of 3 equals 15, instead of 3 groups of 5 that would equal 15. You still get to the same answer. How can you mark that wrong? I just don't get it. Parents are a little upset after a Reddit user posted it online because their child was deducted a mark for writing this instead of this. Does it really matter?
Would you tell me a little bit about what you just told me, repeat it for the camera, about some of the things that you learned about Common Core and what is taught?
Well, obviously they are being taught through speeches of politicians. They're not learning textbooks. They learn about Rosa Parks through one of President Obama's speeches. They don't learn any textbooks. They learn in 8th grade. Then one of the modules comes aligned with a book called It's Okay to Commit Suicide. They also have in the modules on the Engage New York, you can look in there, and when it's time to teach the children about slavery, the teachers are told not to mention Abraham Lincoln.
So they're teaching 8th graders. The lesson plan is called "It's Not" or "It's Okay to Commit Suicide," and through the Common Core modules, when they teach on the Civil War or slavery, they do not teach on Abraham Lincoln at all. No mention of him.
No, and they did not learn about Martin Luther King. They didn't learn about Election Day. They don't learn about any of it anymore. They're removing it all from the history. So, and they don't know cursive. Children are going backwards instead of forward in most classes. Kindergartners sitting with cardboard blinders around them. It's incredible. So, I mean, as far as the education is concerned with Common Core, it's corrupt and it's set up for them to fail. These assessment tests are abusive. Most children didn't even get to finish the test yesterday. This is not enough time allotted to the test itself. So even the good scoring kids didn't have enough time to finish, so guess what? They're going to get a worse grade.
My brethren, be strong in the Most High, and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of Yah, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of the Most High, that ye may be able to stand and withstand in the evil day. And having done all to stand, stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, take the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of the Most High Yah.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1.
Shabbat Shalom to the beautiful set-apart family of the Most High Yah. Welcome to another Sword of the Spirit audio biblical teaching broadcast show. We are your hosts, the servants of Yah. And once again, we greet you in the name of our Master, Yahushua HaMashiach. As always, we want to thank everyone who has decided to fellowship with us on today. Let heaven and earth and all of his creation praise him. We know where two or more are gathered in his name, he is in the midst. So we welcome the presence of the Most High Yah and our Master Yahushua. I'm going to call him my co-host. Shabbat Shalom, sis.
Shabbat Shalom.
So how are you today?
Well, I'm healing, from my fall in Walmart. But,
yeah, we don't need nobody else falling in your family, okay? Y'all.
Yes, but it was not of my doing. So yes.
Yeah, so well, praise God you didn't. Yeah, that you didn't break anything.
Yes, that's the good thing.
Yeah, we're gonna need everybody in your family to be extra careful.
Yes.
Y'all walking, because we don't want no more next week. We don't want nobody else added to the list. So people fail.
We don't. Okay, we don't.
Yeah. So. Well, I'm here today, so I'm pushing through. I'm a little under the weather, but, I'm still here, doing the will of the Most High. As long as I'm able to talk, I'm still going to be here doing what he's called me to do. So we're going to get right into today's 56th show. It is entitled, Therefore Watch, Pray, and Be Ready. And we did this show because of the times that we're in. And it just seems that the believers are oblivious to what is going on around them. It's almost like they've taken Novocaine or something. They're just completely numb, to the issues. They're not mindful at all of what's going on. And so we want to just address, the Mashiach and, Apostle Paul. And we were warned, all throughout Scripture repeatedly, beware, be alert, pray, take heed, let no man deceive you. Do not be deceived. Be ready. Over and over. I don't know how many ways they have said it. And it just seems as if the believers of today, or shall I say so-called believers, they're not taking heed to the Messiah's message to be on guard, signaling the end of this age. So today we want to talk about a very strong message that the Messiah gives to the body of believers in Luke 21, verse 36, especially those of us who are living in the end times. We're actually living this out. We're seeing this pass, and that's why I'm like, it's kind of like surreal, because we've been reading about it, but now it's here.
Yeah.
All of the players, the stage is set, everyone is in their place, and it's happening right before our eyes. And, if you don't know the word and you're not watching, and that's the reason why we have this show is entitled Watch, pray and be ready. But if you're not watching, you don't know what to look for. So that's what we're going to be addressing. What's the Messiah's instruction? When he told us to watch and pray and be ready, and what are we to be watching for? And so what we want to, unveil today, that watching, it not only equates to righteousness, but it's also the blueprint for being spiritually prepared and overcoming in these end times. And if you're not watching, and if you're not mindful and aware of what's really going on, you'll be one of the ones that will accept the mark. You'll be deceived, and probably part of that strong delusion for many who reject truth. And then for the state of the body panel discussion, we're going to discuss and expose this Common Core agenda. If you're a parent, you definitely want to be listening in today and to share this with others. Preena and I are both educators. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. And even though I'm not in the classroom, I still deal, with students, and to see, like, I've noticed, and we're just going to go right into it. I've noticed first, offhand, with my own son. He's 10, and he used to love school. He used to love math, and it just seems like the past couple of years, it just seems like he has lost complete interest in school. And I really, think that this Common Core agenda has something to do with it. It's like, I'm an educator, and I'm not in the classroom anymore. I'm a reading intervention specialist, but still, I need help with this whole thing, because when I was going to school and I had my training, when I got certified, we didn't have to do all of this.
Yeah.
We weren't taught this way, and we weren't trained to teach this way. And this whole new way of this so-called education, we're going to expose the Common Core agenda today. We're going to expose the true intentions behind this fraudulent so-called educational mandate that is sweeping the nation, as well as reveal how it's directly linked to Bill Gates, the UN, and we're going to specifically speak about the UN Agenda 21 and this new world order. That's what this is about. That's what people don't understand. And it's like I said, if you're a parent, you definitely want to listen into this. Unfortunately, and I could not find. I tried to find the video, and I might, try to have it for next week. I don't know what happened. I saved it, but I went back, couldn't find it. I will find it. But there was a teacher who was speaking. She actually quit education. I told you that I almost didn't come back this year. I, have almost 5 college degrees in education in various fields. And I wanted to walk away from something that I used to love. I grew up as a little girl wanting to be a teacher and wanting to help others. And I remember when I first began teaching, how I used to go to work and try to work with joy in my heart. I used to love it. And they have just completely, and you can attest to this, have taken away the love for learning from children, as well as a love for teaching. Like, teaching is like it's like a chore. You don't even want to do it anymore. Teachers have these abundant lesson plans, 20-page lesson plan. It's too much data. And I'm gonna talk about this data. So today we split up the state of the body panel discussion. I'm gonna be talking about the Common Core, but we're also gonna be discussing these executive orders that have been passed by President Obama. And why everybody worried about Lemonade and Beyonce and worried about Birdman and the Breakfast Club. Agendas have been passed, and Preena's going to talk about these agendas, but I'm going to talk about this Common Core first, because many of us do not have any idea, and I have a clip I'm going to play in a moment, but I just want to start off to let everyone know this Common Core, this is supposed to be a new, innovative, so-called way of learning where the kids are going to be critical thinkers. But that's, the point that they put out there. That's not what it really is. This Common Core is funded by none other than Bill Gates. And what they want to do is to put biometric bracelets. That's what this whole thing about this data is. They want to use this data to put biometric bracelets on our children to measure and monitor their behavior, their actions, their interests. This teacher, and I'm going to try to see if I can find this clip, but she was speaking about the data, and she was telling how you can opt out of having your child take these Common Core tests, these standardized tests. And I'm going to have that information available next week. So that parents who are, as I am, disgusted with this test, and I've seen, like I said, a change in my son, he doesn't like school at all.
Yeah.
And he used to enjoy school. He used to love math. Now that's become the subject because he's got 15,000 steps. I'm showing him how to regroup, like we learn how to regroup.
Yeah. And
showing him how to do division. And they got 15,000 multiplication, all of that. 15,000 steps just to get to one answer. That I could have told him in 1 or 2 steps. You got 15 steps. No one in real life does all of that, or even use a lot of these things that they're trying to teach our children. The minds of these children, they're not equipped to handle these tests, these standardized tests that they keep making up. It's about money, for one, but Common Core is an agenda that pushes a communist mindset, a socialist mindset into the schools, into the minds of our children. It's a part of the UN Agenda 21, a.k.a. the New World Order. Okay, if you don't know about the New World Order, you should. This whole entire agenda is about widening inequality, where the whole thing about the communism or communist society or socialist society is where you have a widening of inequality, where it's either you super, super rich or you're super, super poor. There is no middle class society. We see this already. They're wiping the middle class society out. It's a plan of extreme an extreme comprehensive plan to reorganize society as we know it today. This includes social engineering, global and political control. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, you can Google it. Because when I was just like, I need to find out more about this Common Core. And when I was looking up some things, I couldn't believe, I had no idea that this was connected to the New World Order. This entire agenda, it seeks to break down the traditional methods of learning in order to embed a system of acceptance. And this, what they feel is necessary for total control. This is what they do to us now, and everything else. They continue to put things on the television to program you and continue to replay these same things, just like the movie we saw, They Live, or Roddy Piper. They want you to watch TV. They want you to remain dumbed down. Don't read. You know, they want it this way. They can control the way that you think. That's part of that transhumanism. But what this whole agenda is, and the whole agenda or the goal is for them to be able to produce obedient, dependent people, starting with our children, who are willing to fully embrace the implementation of this UN agenda that they have going. So, you know, me being a longtime educator and a parent, I do not agree with, and I have never felt, and I told you this, that this Common Core agenda standards, whatever you want to call it, I never felt that this had our children's best interest at heart. And ever since its onset, ever since the takeover, because I call it takeover because it's a takeover of the entire educational system. Children they don't even want to go to school. They're crying. Prina, we see them. They're crying because they have to keep taking all these tests. They're testing. Prina, tell me. I mean, come on. From October all the way to June, our kids are still testing now.
Testing.
They're still testing. They've been testing since October. They're relentless. When it comes to this, these babies are tired. They don't even like school anymore. They're tired of when they get done with one test and they got another test. Then they got the standardized test and they got the MEP test and they got the M-STEP and then they got the MAP and then they got the LLI. Then when they get done with that, then the kids are tested out.
And then they got their regular.
And my son took the test because he was tired. He told me the other day, he said, "Mommy, I need a break from school." I need a break. He said, I'm just tired. He doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
They tested him on there, and the teacher said, I know this is not right because my son is very intelligent, very intelligent. He was reading fluently when he was 3 years old. And the test showed that he needs a reading specialist. The teacher said, I know this is not your son at all. I'm not giving my son's name on here, but she was like, I know this is not him at all. She said, I know he reads well. He's been reading well. He's in the fourth grade or whatever. And she was like, I'm going to have him retake it. And she said, I'm going to have him take it in parts. He didn't even finish. Just as the lady was saying in the audio clip at the beginning of the show, when the kids don't finish, then it's counting against them. This is like what they're doing. They're bullying these kids, and they're trying to create drones.
Yeah.
Of what they want. They want obedient service. It's about controlling the minds of the ones that they want that are going to allow you. Figure if you can start with the children, you can create your next society. Yeah. So now they already poison us with the GMOs and the food and the chemtrails and whatever else, the water, fluoride in the water, and the vaccinations. And, now they like, okay, now that's not going to be enough. We got to come in. And this system has nothing to do. They lied and said that this Common Core had educators that were involved and approved this. There were no educators that were involved or approved of this. The Common Core doesn't make common sense at all. And I want to play this clip that's going to kind of give us a better idea of where this comes from, and then we're going to come right back. But this is just ridiculous. You're going to find out just listening where this all comes from. We'll come right back.
A couple years, the Russians developed a course very much like this, and it was so roundly condemned by the teachers, by the students, and indeed by the whole country, that it disappeared after 2 years.
So if the Common Core is so reviled by teachers, students, education standards proponents, principals, and seemingly every other sector of society with a direct stake in them, why are they being promoted so heavily? Where is the funding for this initiative coming from?
If you do have commonality, it's like an electrical plug, you get more free market competition. Scale is good for free market competition. Individual state regulatory capture is not good for competition. And so this thing, in terms of driving innovation, you'd think that sort of pro-capitalistic, market-driven people would be in favor of it, but somehow it's gotten to be controversial, and states will decide. Whatever they want to decide is fine.
Common Core has been developed with the direct support of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has invested $173 million in the development of Common Core materials and promoting the initiative at the state level, and an estimated $2.3 billion in total funding related to Common Core standards development, including grants for the development of biometric bracelets that will monitor students' interest level in class. And you start out that article with a very specific discussion of a Gates Foundation-funded program called the Measures of Effective Teachers Project. So perhaps you can tell us about this project and its significance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Measures of Effective Teachers Project is part of a $45 million plan to quantify, to measure school teachers' alleged efficiency in delivering the public school curriculum. The project has a great many individuals involved, including academic psychologists, sociologists, education scholars, even a statistician from the RAND Corporation. The experiment began in 2009 and focuses mainly on inner-city schools. Now, the whole idea behind this is the establishment of a metrics for identifying techniques to maintain young people's attention spans. This looks to be, in part, a type of audience research, complete with galvanic skin bracelets to measure student behaviors and reactions. So the ostensible use of the data will be to determine how teachers will be hired, compensated, promoted, and so on. We have to be put on guard when we hear terms such as measurement or quantification, especially when it comes to education and teaching, because these were the techniques originally used to bring psychology into the American educational enterprise to begin with. The fact that this is being done to mainly African American and Latino children in inner city schools should also call to mind how early social science has been used to perpetuate eugenics and emphasize the alleged racially specific inferiorities of non-whites. So the project overall essentially involves the dehumanization of what is an inherently human process, that is, cultivating individuals to recognize and aspire to a higher intellectual level. The public school curriculum, the abundance of standardized testing, and now programs like these collectively act as a harness on real education. It's an attempt to refine the psychological conditioning and curriculum delivery process for a curriculum that is more or less dead on arrival and intended to discourage independent thought and curiosity.
If the interest that billionaires like the Gates and other Common Core advocates displayed in revising educational standards were merely about dumbing down the math and language skills of children across America, that would be bad enough. But the ramifications of this process do not stop at the ability to add, subtract, or spell. They go right to the heart of a vision for society that was laid out over a century ago, and perhaps most baldly articulated by President Woodrow Wilson himself in his 1909 address to the New York City High School Teachers Association, where he admitted, "We want one class of persons to have a liberal classical education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity, in every society, to forego the privileges of liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific, difficult manual tasks." As educators like former New York State Teacher of the Year John Taylor Gatto have exhaustively documented over decades of study, the end goal of this process is and always has been to prepare students solely for the purpose of being obedient workers and citizens in a status quo owned and operated by the political, economic, and industrial elite.
You'd learn that young people are really captives of a desperate utopian scheme to hold them subordinate to the will of managers. A vast utopian scheme to extend their childhoods far beyond the natural term so they might better fit the hierarchical nature of corporate economies and corporate societies.
That the conscious manipulation of the masses into obedient workers is the real end goal of these educational reforms is made explicit in example after example from the Common Core materials that promote blind allegiance to and obedience to government in inappropriate and blatantly propagandistic ways.
What do you think kids who can't read well are writing about? I'll give you an example from my own home state of Wisconsin. Little Hudson, Wisconsin, had a viral, went national, right, where little kids in my state were sent home, third graders, and given the following writing assignment. Tell us how the state is just like the family, but better. That was their writing assignment. And this, I'm now giving away the game. If you ask me, you put a gun to my head and ask me, what in one word Common Core is? That's it. It's statism. It has nothing to do with education. It is a concerted effort on the part of the government to convince your kids they belong first to the government and second to you. It is a drive that at every sense of in every sense of curriculum we're going to look at. It seeks to divorce parents from children, to make kids wards of the state.
Everything you have been told about Common Core is a lie. It is not a state initiative. It was not developed by educators. It is not going to better prepare students for college or real-world applications. It is part of a century-long process of using the education system to mold students into more obedient workers and tax cattle, and it is promoted by billionaires with hidden agendas of their own. After all, if Common Core is worthy of hundreds of millions of dollars in direct investment and billions of dollars in indirect investment, why doesn't Gates send his own children to a school that actually makes use of the standards? Instead, the prestigious Lakeside School in Seattle that the Gates children attend does not mention the Common Core math or language arts standards anywhere on their website and explicitly states that their school is for more advanced children, and thus eschews the standard testing that forms the basis of the Common Core system. As opposition to Common Core continues to rise and implementation continues to proceed, concerned parents, students, and community members would do well to ask why Common Core is good enough for their own children, but not for the privileged offspring of the Gates and the other billionaire oligarchs behind the modern education system.
Frina, we're back.
Yes. Okay.
Are you listening to this? Did you? I mean, now it's good enough for us.
Yeah.
But it's not good enough for Bill Gates and the billionaire and the elitist children. Their children are not going to schools where they're utilizing the Common Core. So why is it that everyone else, like it goes back to what the gentleman was saying in the clip, you know, as far as they want one certain class to be educated one way and then the others to go, the forego. You know, they get a different type. This is the same thing that we see. Unfortunately, and I hate saying this, and I hate making this about a race, and it's not about a race, it's about a nation. But our children, the so-called African Americans, because we know that's not who we are, but there is a huge gap, the achievement gap from our children, the resources that these suburban schools that they're given with these white kids. They have a different kind. My son goes to a school where it's primarily Caucasian, there's Asians, you know, it's mixture, black, it's every. We live in a suburban area. The resources, the school itself, state-of-the-art teachers, state-of-the-art equipment. I mean, just even the food that they're served. In the lunchroom, they have food from restaurants in their lunchroom, Jet's Pizza, Boston Market, top of the line, fresh fruits and vegetables, colorful, crispy. You know, they're served healthy snacks. They're not allowed to bring what are those? Hot Cheetos.
Yeah, hot Cheetos.
You know, to school, our kids come to bring in, and their lunch is hot Cheetos and a Faygo Pop. When you look at the lunches that are served to our children, I wouldn't feed that to my dog. They're serving, I call it meat a la surprise, where it's red and pink all in the middle, Wonder Bread a la ketchup pizza. You know, it's crazy. The playing field is not level. It's not. Our children get the poorest of everything. We know this goes back to a part of the curses of Deuteronomy 28. But it's never been the same, and it was never meant to be the same, and it's never going to be the same. But the point I'm making is this Common Core agenda is just basically continuing to fulfill prophecy. Okay, of what the Most High Yah said would happen, and we see it. What is your take on what you heard? You know, anything stood out that when you listened to the audio clip?
Just basically, you know, you are not a thinker. You know, you can't think, you know, outside of the box. You can't, you know, you are thinking one way, and you are basically cattle. You know, AKA slaves.
Yeah,
you know,
pretty much. How do you feel?
Say that again.
As an educator, and you still in the classroom.
Yeah, I hate it.
I left before this hit the fan. So you tell me, how do you feel? How has it made your job? Because you never got a chance, I don't think, to even see the other side of how it can be without Common Core. So how do you make that? Does it make your job harder?
Yes, because you know you are evaluated based on test scores. You know, the standardized scores, and you are basically told that if you are not, your kids is not in
performance
towards the 50th percentile, and you know they don't make 25% on, you know, the MAP test or the NWEA test, then you are not considered a proficient teacher. So the way that the Common Core have teachers on the edge, because you are basically, they want you to drive the test in your instruction and not just teaching them what they need to know to get to college or what they need to know to be productive citizens in the workforce.
They need to know to be a just to be able to read, because our kids can't even read, and it doesn't work.
Right, and so you are basically following the scope and sequence of, their standards, the government standards, and you are teaching to the test. I literally have no curriculum in my classroom. I've complained to you more than one time. Education has really, really changed. This is not what I have signed up for when I went into education. And I love teaching, and I told you numerous of times, if I can check out and throw my degree in the garbage, it will be in the garbage, because I'm ready. I'm done. I'm really done with education. I am there because I have to take care of my family at the end of the day. But I trust and believe we're in the end time, so I ain't trying to go back to school to reinvent nothing,
No.
So I ain't trying to go, because I, have another passion of mine that I want to pursue, but I know we're in the end time, and I'm not going to even worry about that right now. But just the Common Core in itself, it has been draining, and my team of teachers and colleagues that I have been around, we talk about it all the time. It doesn't measure how much they know or what they know. These standardized test assessments don't even show what they learned over time.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't measure anything to me. Because I have kids that can articulate different things in the classroom and on a regular, paper and pen test. But then when they get to the Common Core, I have things to click, 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 click. And I have to go slow down. You got to monitor them. Slow down. Take your time. And they looking at me like, woman, I don't even want to be here taking this test.
I don't even know what this is saying.
Yeah, and then they looking at
what
me
is
like,
this asking me to do?
They want to know, Miss Wiltshire, you ain't teach this. Can you show me? Can you tell me what? I said, I can't give you the answer. I can't tell you. Just read it. Process elimination. You giving them all these little test strategies to, and then they had these little silly NWA rallies. Pumping them up. It's just a bunch of foolishness to me in the school system, and the education has really, really, really changed from the time I've been in school, for my children coming out of the school system to seeing my grandchildren going through this Common Core mess is just appalling. And you, like the man said, they're just making a class of slaves. You're just gonna teach one way, and obey how the government sets standards. And if you're gonna be a teacher, you ain't teaching outside of this. They
everything.
They give you a little leeway in teaching, things, but for the most part, you are teaching towards that standardized test so that they can beat the meat or beat the map or beat what.
Well, it's a setup. It's a setup, and like the gentleman said in the clip, it's a fail before you before they even hit. It's already a fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they know this.
Yeah.
That's a part of the plan. This whole, like I said, this whole Common Core and is part of the UN Agenda 21. That's part of the New World Order to produce obedient, dependable slaves who is going to embrace this whole UN agenda. And they've been doing it they've been doing it with the music.
Yeah.
They've been doing it with all these wicked, abominable laws that they've passed. They've softened many so-called believers' minds to the hearts to sin. They soften their hearts and minds to sin. That which they once thought was sin, because they're continuing to push it and push this agenda on TV and make you accept it, force it down your throat. Now it's okay for two men to be married.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't. It was a time when you wouldn't even come out the closet.
Right.
You wouldn't even peek around the corner, let alone come out the closet. No. Yes, I mean, now that the chance now is the bathroom. It's crazy, and all of it. They got their hands in every facet of society to push us all to accept this new way of thinking, that this new world, and it's gonna happen because it's the scripture. Yeah, as we're gonna get into. But next week, because I'm gonna allow Prina to get into this these executive orders that was just signed and passed, but. Next week, I will have the information for those parents who would like to have a waiver as far as their children, because they're going to tell you, oh, it's the law. Yeah. You know, you have to take this. This is, you know. So I'm gonna maybe try to see if I can get this audio clip so you can actually listen in to what she said and allow her, because she said it best. Just kind of give you the information on how to do this. So I'm going to allow you to go ahead and let's talk about these executive orders. So what you got for us?
Okay. So, you know, since, you know, Obama been in office, he has done every abominable, every abominable law possible. And, you know, according to 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3, I just want to point out that, you know, they haven't said that he's the man of lawlessness, but we know and we have the strong feeling that he is the Antichrist. And we know that all we're waiting for is for him to just switch the role of his peace.
And sign that peace treaty with Israel.
And then he gonna exalt himself as God, and then it's all over. Jacob's trouble, the great tribulation, and then the day of Yah. All that's, you know, gonna transpire in the 3.5 years. But along with his lawlessness, he have set in place executive orders where no one can override these laws that, you know, these from the federal government, the powers of taking away basic rights of humans. And one of them that just was passed a year ago was the force of labor slavery, where you are not paid. You are under the direction of FEMA, and you are to work for the government without any compensation.
Hey.
Nothing. You just
a slave. You a slave. That was the agenda passed, to make you a slave, and everybody worried about what else? It's so much going. Every day got somebody worried about
the Obamacare. You know, the Obamacare was another executive, you know, order that came into play to force government health care, because in the next, by 2017, there will be no other health care. They're trying to push that out, and for you to receive health care in the United States, you must be marked with a microchip.
So are you saying that, let me make this clear. So are you saying that they're trying to, like, say for me, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. Are you saying that they're getting rid of all, they want to get rid of all other health care except for this Obamacare? Yeah,
they pushing the Obamacare, like that was like the, you know, like the you know, when he brought it in, it was like just everybody you could choose. You know, look how they're doing it now. Like if you don't have insurance, they're going to sanction you. You know, you are not going to have any other health care but the government health care. And like Canada, you know, and you know, because they have government care, but you still can have outside care. But those of you that, you know, don't choose to take the mark or the chip that they're putting in us, then you will be forced to the FEMA camp, and you will be forced to the guillotines or the firing squad. Also, just doing research, you know, I found that, you know, that the government can seize all control of telecommunication media. They can take over all electrical power, gas, petroleum, fuels, and minerals without your permission. They can seize your personal property, such as transportation, your homes. They can relocate you. These are all laws that Obama has passed. They can relocate you to a new community without your permission. They can take over. Well, we know they've done this, but they can take over food resources and farms. One of the executive orders allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions, as we see. Common Core, Obamacare, what else? Another one, they can take over all transportation, like railways, inlands, waterways, public storage facilities. Basically, you have no right, and they can seize anything. And I was looking at, I just stumbled across it. Our stadiums that that's been built up frequently, our hockey arenas, football stadiums. They are backed by FEMA. These billionaires.
Yeah, because they're doing all the roads too. You know that, right?
Yes,
the
they
bridges.
The roads. Yes, they have FEMA. They have these NFL owners have allowed FEMA to use their arenas to do emergency evacuations or
like they did in Hurricane Katrina.
Yes, exactly.
We saw what happened down there, don't we?
That was no coincidence.
Oh, no.
They did that. And the sad thing that I had stumbled across that really going to blow your mind is that they had a mountain. It was a training in Denver that the FEMA did, and they abducted kids from schools without parents' knowledge, and they took them to a football stadiums in Denver. They also did it in New York, and it's called Operation Mountain Guardian. And they did this with no knowledge of parents, and they hired trained actresses to desensitize the FEMA guards to plead for their kids back. So they were desensitizing them in this training so that when parents are coming with them in outrage and demanding their kids and they know how to be insensitive to their emotions. So this is this was an order from DHS, Department of Human Services, in order to become martial law ready.
Wow.
And this took place, I just stumbled across this because I never knew this, in 2011. So these trainings have been going on since Obama has been in office, and, they have drones. They made an executive order that drones now can be commercial, private, as well as military. And not only do they have security, like cameras that's like can watch and survey over large lands of mass, but on these drones they have machine guns built in on the side, so if there is any resistance of any kind, they can shoot you on the spot.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I have been having a lot of dreams about these drones.
Yeah.
I could not phantom my head around it, but then when I saw this video of this man talking and how these drones were hovering and how low they can get to the ground, and they have surveillance cameras on there, and they have, you have no right to your privacy anymore. And Obama made a joke in this video. He was like, he said they are the predator, the surveillance predator, and I just watching the video and just looking at all these executive orders that have just came under his just for him
he's making
for
sure.
over 7 years. He's showing, or it's showing us that he is ushering in that Antichrist. You know, I'm sorry.
He's an anti-Messiah for sure. He's definitely an anti-Messiah.
Yes. So I just can't. Something is going to go down really soon, and this year or the beginning of next year.
Before he get out of office, if he get out.
And so our people just need to be prepared. Wake up. And stop putting your trust in the government, and they have no care for you. They just trying to desensitize you in any way possible. Your clip that you showed, the video you showed me with the biogenics, now that they got the hidden code in the going to the emergency, that you go in surgery, if you sign it, they can vaccinate you without your permission.
Yeah, please let them know. It's called is it biogenics?
Yes.
Biogenetics.
Biogenetics.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Biogenetics. If you have to get sent to the emergency room, or you have to have surgery, and you have stated, that I don't, want to be vaccinated, there is like a small blueprint. If you agree for biogenetics, that's the same thing as saying, I give you my permission to vaccinate me. So please be careful. Look out for that. See, they're putting a twist on these names. They're getting crafty because they see that people are waking up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People are there. They see that people are waking up. People are not just falling for the okie doke. We're not satisfied anymore with you vaccinating and killing our children and poisoning them and giving them autism and ADD and all these different things.
Yeah. Mhm.
We're getting a lot smarter now, and they're like, oh, okay, we can't trick them like we used to. They don't want you to think. They don't want you to be. This whole thing, like I said, the Common Core, it's not about you being a critical thinker. It's about you thinking the way that they want you to think. That's going to help push this agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Mm-hmm. It's nothing else. Do you really think they care that much about you and your children?
No.
And this agenda, it has nothing to do with children.
No.
They don't care.
No.
They don't care at all.
No, they don't. I just believe that the Common Core and all the things they're doing is just another form of Willie Lynch, the slave master taming their slaves and keeping their slaves in order. That's what it is. Just another, and just to make another in light of the NFL and the sports arena, because they, in this video they were saying that soon there's not going to be any more games. They're selling
any more what?
For games. They're not going to have like real football games in there in some years. In some years to come, there will be no football gaming going on in there. Mm-hmm. They have sold. These NFL owners have sold to FEMA their stadiums, so they already gave them their rights to take it over. So as soon as martial law is ushered in, those stadiums that we call sports arena is no longer sports arena. They are detention camps to host detain you. Okay. Mm-hmm. And
same thing with Walmart too, because they close. That's what the whole point of them closing all the Walmart. And explain to them what guillotine means, just in case somebody doesn't know what guillotines are.
Okay, that's like a beheading.
Machine to behead you.
And they brought that in because they saying now that the lethal injection. This was in the video. I was like tripping, but they said the lethal injection. There has been a string of lapses, meaning that there are not enough drugs to lethally inject. So the Supreme Judge, federal judge officer, ordered that the firing squad and the guillotines be reissued, be reushered in, and injections are now going to go away. We know that America is full of drugs. Okay. You mean to tell me if I could go on any corner and get some kind of drug? You mean to tell me you can get to injection drugs? In your right mind.
Mhm.
And they were also saying that the NFL was also in backing of confiscating guns. So they're promoting to confiscate guns. So they're going to be a part of that. You are not able to bear arms in a couple of years, and you take away ammunition. You have no weapon to fight against yourself.
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of these false flags that they're doing with all these so-called shootings and killings. This is all set up. It's a stage. They had the same girl
crying.
She was at like 4 or 5 different. I thought you got killed at the last two. Now you over here crying too?
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, she sure does. She know how to put on a good act, doesn't she?
No, they are.
She was at the last two.
They are paid actresses. They have paid actresses to desensitize female guards. They have paid actresses to go around and to these events. These are paid actresses that have, committed themselves to the government to usher in this new world order and martial law. That's all that agenda is. And so, I just hope that, our listeners will be vigilant and watchful, and as you get into your lesson and really, really absorb what is about to take place. Autumn was in the, work at, a shoe store, and she said a lady came in, and she was on the phone talking to someone, but she had just, announced to the workers and whoever was around, she was like, I know something is about to go down, and she just, into Christianity, but she said, I know something about to go down. Y'all need to be prepared, start stocking up for water, and she just going in and, told them how to warm if there's no heat, and so if we know that it's a sense of urgency because it's not just us that's feeling it, it's just like pockets of different people that you run into are feeling this urgency and feeling the need that something is really about to go down.
Yeah, and we're going to continue with part 2 of this next week because I want to go into something as far as this going into this, this third world war that they're going to try to start and the way that they may try to come in because judgment is coming to this land.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because she's this is Mystery Babylon, and they were being warned in Congress when all those tens of thousands of bees that was on the storefront when they in June when they were voting if they were going to yay or nay for the same-sex marriage. He was warning them, just like when he said the pestilence over with Pharaoh, warning them.
Yeah.
Of course, y'all is allowing. He is allowing him to be in office because he's part of prophecy. He's part of Bible prophecy. This has to come to pass. This is what this country wants.
Yeah.
They're full of lawless ones. This is what they want. They wanted to have this law be passed. Like they said, love won. But they're going to find out what love is in the end. So we're going to continue next week with the state of the body panel discussion with more updates, more warnings. I'm going to try to have that information for you guys next week as far as opting out of the Common Core and also the information that I want to talk about because I think we do not need to be frantic.
No.
And I'm getting ready to just start getting into my lesson. But I do think, from based off of the information that I came across and what may happen, and they tested us in, I think it was it 2000? Was it 2001?
I think it
when
was.
When they had the blackout.
2003, 4, I think.
Was the blackout?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. I think it was 2003. Yeah, that's right, because that was just before he was born. Okay, yeah. Around that time when they had the blackout, I think it's something along that lines, but it's going to be national, like across the board, and it's not going to be, so I think, we'll just say that for next week. We're going to go a little bit more into this, but it's time for us to, and that's the reason why today's show is entitled, Therefore Watch, Pray, and Be Ready, because it's time. We're getting ready to come upon some troubling times.
Yes,
Jacob's trouble is on us. They've already started persecuting the saints. People have lost their businesses and jobs because they've taken a stand And you're going to have to do that. If you don't stand for him, you're against him. Yeah. We say this every week. There is no middle ground. There is no safe space, safe spot. You can't straddle the fence.
No.
You have to take a stand.
Yeah.
You can't say I'm for him and then you support everything and endorse and embrace everything that he finds detestable and abominable. If you follow him, then your mindset should be renewed like our Messiah's mind. You're not thinking like the world is thinking. What he detests, you detest. What he loves, you love. I don't have my own mindset. My mindset follows him. He said follow me. I follow his word.
Yeah.
The world doesn't shape the way I think. It doesn't matter how many abominable laws they come up with. I'm not following none of them.
Yeah.
And it's going to come down to it where you're going to be like Paul and apostles and the prophets, where you're going to be killed for the faith. You're going to be in prison for the faith. Yeah. You might be in hiding. Some might escape and make it to the wilderness. Some might not. We don't know. Whatever y'all's will is his will. But I know if my dream that I've been having, this was when this person is in office now.
Yeah.
This was it.
Yeah.
This was the person when this whole NDAA Act jumped off with this martial law. It happened while he was in office. And we know he's made comments and tried to make it seem like it was a joke about him not leaving office. And how Congress, he felt like if he could run a third term, he would win, and how, Congress, the Constitution won't allow it. But see, there's loopholes.
Yeah. And
we're going to talk about that next week. There are loopholes. And I have not I've been grieved. I have not had peace.
Yeah.
From November on, it's getting ready to change.
Oh, yeah.
Our lives, the way that we know it.
Yes. It's
getting ready to change it.
Yeah, it's really going to get really heated when an election comes in November.
Oh, yeah.
Guys, I think it's going to, right after that, it's going to,
And we're not saying this for you to be nervous and scared or have anxiety, because if you serving Yah, that's where your comfort and your trust is.
Yes.
But you do have to be aware. We're getting ready to get into it. You have to be aware. You got to be ready. And I'm getting ready to start getting into my lesson. Thank you, sis. Great job with the information you have provided for us. But I want to read 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 7 through 13. It says, always striving to learn, but never being able to come into the full knowledge of the truth. Now as Janus and Jambres stood up against Moses, so do these also withstand the truth. Men of corrupt minds, far off from the faith. But they will not go further, for their foolishness will be well known to every man, even as that of the others was also. But you have closely followed my doctrine, the conduct, the purpose, the faith, the long-suffering, the love, which is keeping his commandments. That's what love is. The patient endurance, because we know he says those that endure to the end shall be saved. You're not saved yet. Baptism alone does not make you saved because you got baptized when you was 12 years old. Going to church every Sunday does not make you saved. Quoting scriptures and because you read the Bible forward and backwards does not make you saved. It's about walking in his word. But patient endurance, the persecution, the suffering, such as happened to me. This is Paul talking about what happened to him. He said how he was persecuted. He said, likewise, all those desiring to live a righteous life in Messiah Yeshua will be persecuted. So he said, if you want to live a righteous life, meaning you want to follow him and keep the true faith that our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the apostles and the prophets, he said, you're going to be persecuted. You're going to suffer persecution. A Messiah said it himself. To enter into the kingdom, you must suffer much tribulation. You're going to have to suffer. You're going to be persecuted. If you are not willing to suffer and go through the persecution, you're not going to make it. Paul is saying the long suffering. the patient endurance. You're going to have to go through the persecution, the suffering. These things happen to him. All of the prophets were murdered. Stephen, murdered for standing for the truth. They were jailed. They were in hiding. These people, so-called fake people that's in these Christian churches going around talking about they prophets, and they telling you the law's done away with. He says they will say this because there's no light in them. If they speak not according to this law and the testimony, there's no light in them. That means they don't know the word. There's no such thing as a lawless society. No society can function without laws. You can't even run your household without laws if you have children. You have to have rules. What kind of society would we have? It would be just like the movie The Purge, without law. So what book is he going to open up in the end in Revelation? What book is he reading from? If the law is done away with, then there is no sin. Because 1 John 3 and 4 tell us that sin is the transgression of the law. It's the breaking of the law. So if there is no law, then there is no sin. If there is no sin, then there was no need for our Messiah to come, and you make the Most High Yah a liar if you believe that. We're coming upon some time where Yah is getting ready to start testing. But I want to read something in Revelation 3 and 10. It says, because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I also will keep you from the hour of testing, that hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. See, a lot of you are going to be tested. A lot of you don't know what you're really made of when it comes to this walk until they tell you they're going to put you in jail if you don't abide by this wicked law. You know, if you're a minister and you're worried about your money and you're worried about the congregation, many of these Christian pastors, they're not going to stand up and tell you the truth because they're worried about their tithe. They're not going to tell you the truth. If you're taking that 501c3 money, they already got a muzzle on your mouth for what you can preach and what you can teach. And then if you teach against it, they can come and shut your operation down. But my thing is, if you are a servant of the Most High, you can't be bought with money. Money is not going to shut your mouth. Jail is not going to shut your mouth. Guillotine is not going to shut your mouth. He says, don't fear him who can kill the body, but fear him who can kill both the body and the soul. If you try to save your life, he says, in the end, you're going to lose it. But if you're willing to lose your life for his name's sake, then he's going to give you all of that and then some back. We're coming upon times right now where you're going to have to make a choice. You can no longer be lukewarm. Our Messiah, it don't sit well with him. That's why he said in Revelation 3:15 and 16 that the lukewarm, he's going to spew out of his mouth. He said, I wish it was either hot or cold, but because you're neither, he said, I'm going to spew you out my mouth. I mean, I'm going to vomit you. When you vomit because something doesn't sit well with your stomach, something that's making you sick. So our Messiah is saying the fact that you think that you can straddle the fence, the fact that you think you can stay on both sides and not make a decision, he said, it's making me sick. You disgust me. I'm going to vomit you out. I'm going to get rid of you. He's not going to want to have anything to do with you. You're going to have to make a choice. Either you're going to be for him or not at all. There is no in between. That doesn't exist. You either on the narrow road, the straight and narrow road that leads to life, or you're on that broad, wide road that leads to destruction where many go therein. That's where the majority of the world is on. They're on that broad road because they want to be accepted. They don't want to be left out of the quote-unquote loop. But he said there's going to be an hour of testing on the earth. For those who have kept my word of perseverance, he said, I'm going to keep you from that hour of testing. That doesn't mean that you're not going to suffer, that you're not going to go through trials and tribulations. This walk is not about feeling good. Some of you only love him as long as everything feels good, as long as you feel like he's blessing you with a house and a car. That's not what blessing is. Blessing is not equated to material things. Blessing is actually keeping his commandments. That's what success is, according to Joshua 1:8. Keeping his commandments, that's what success is. But many of you, you're going to have to be vigilant. And we talked about this last week. Being careful, being watchful, being observant, being cautious, being on guard, being awake, being sober, vigilant, ready and waiting. And so before I get into today's lesson, I want to quickly go back and give a quick recap of last week's 55th lesson. If you missed it, it was entitled, Who is Your Brethren, Mother, and Family? And we basically answered the question when Yeshua responded in Matthew 12:46-50, when they told him that his biological mother and brothers were outside waiting to speak with him. He responded, who is my mother and who are my brothers? We basically explained the deeper meaning of what he meant when he said that and what you should expect when dealing with family members and friends or loved ones who are close to us, who reject the truth and who accept lies. And we had some wonderful testimonies. Last week's show was such a blessing to many. So if you missed our last week's show, please check it out. Who is your brother and family, and who is your mother and family? So getting with today's show is entitled again, Therefore Watch, Pray, and Be Ready. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13, the believers or the followers of our Master Yahushua, they're encouraged by the Apostle Paul with the following. 1 Corinthians 16:13 says, watch, stand fast in the faith, be valiant, be strong. And the first warning that Paul gives us in 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13, it says to watch. And in Luke chapter 12, verse 37, Yeshua quotes the following. Blessed are those servants who, when the master finds, on watch when he returns. He said, blessed are those servants who, when I return, I find on watch. And again, in Luke 21:36, we're warned to be watchful at all times. So what did the Apostle Paul and our Master Yahushua mean when they both warned us to watch? So we're going to, quickly break down the definition of watch. I'm going to go to, first off, thesaurus.com gives a definition to watch means to pay attention, to apply oneself. And these are some synonyms that came up when it means to watch. It says to observe, to notice, to keep one's eye on, to concentrate on, to devote oneself, to hearken. That means to listen, to follow, to regard, and to hear. And in the Hebrew, to hear means to obey. That's what it means. If you didn't, if I tell my son and I give him a command and I say, clean up your room, then he say, okay. But then I come back the next day and he still haven't cleaned it up. And he say, okay, Mom. Then 2 days later, now I'm ready to punish him. Because I told him, earlier in the week to clean up his room. He hasn't really heard me if he hasn't done it. If you're telling someone something and they haven't done it, or they haven't followed it, and they haven't completed that task, they haven't heard you. Because when they actually hear you, they do it. Strong Hebrews, and I have about 4 Strong Hebrew definition numbers for you for watch, so you can kind of write these down. Strong Hebrews 3252. For watch, it says to be observant. Same thing we just read in Thesaurus. Strong Hebrews 4931 says to observe. It says the duty or charge, to keep, and to safeguard. Strong Hebrew 6822 says to observe, to await, to behold, to wait for, to keep. Watchmen. And we know that Ezekiel 3:33, it talks about us being a watchman. Strong Hebrew 8104, it says to hedge about, to guard, generally to protect, to attend to beware, to be circumspect. That means to be cautious or careful, to take heed to yourself, the mark. It says to look narrowly as in the straight and narrow walk, to preserve, to regard. And this is something that stood out. It says to wait for, as we're going to find out in a minute, from the Messiah himself, talking about those servants that wait for him. But it said to save self and sure, as in to make your salvation sure. To save yourself. He told you to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. We're supposed to be on that narrow road, that straight and narrow road. All these are the same words for watch. When he tells you to watch and to pray, meaning to be on guard. Protect my word. Be cautious. Beware. To regard. To wait for. Strong Hebrews 8108 says to guard and watchfulness. Strong Hebrews 8245 says to be alert. Sleepless. Hence, to be on the lookout for. We're waiting for the return of our Messiah. We're waiting. But while we're waiting, we're obeying. We're keeping his word. We're regarding his word. We're walking circumspectly as he has told us. Be you circumspectly, meaning walk. Careful how you walk. Careful what you expose yourself to. Careful what you do. It also says to hasten, to remain, to wake, and to watch for. So in the spiritual sense, to watch is to be vigilant, to be on guard, to be fully awake, aware, alert, intently focused, waiting for our Messiah. In the physical sense, we see in Matthew chapter 26, verses 37 through 40, if you can quickly go there. Matthew 26, verses 37 through 40. The meaning of watch here is given primarily in the physical sense. Now, in this particular chapter verse, we find that the Messiah is chastising his disciples for not remaining physically awake and watching during the hour preceding his arrest. So Matthew 26, verses 37 reads, and taking along Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, Yeshua began to grieve and to be deeply troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is deeply grieved, even unto death. Stay here and watch with me. And going forward a little, he fell on his face praying and saying, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as your will. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, so you were not able to watch for 1 hour with me? Now, when we get down to verse 41, we will see our master referring to watching in the spiritual sense. When we read verse 41, it says, watch. He tells Peter, watch and pray. Watch and pray. And lest you enter into temptation. He began telling him the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And a precept to this is coming from John 17 and 15. And this is the reason why our Messiah prayed this way on behalf of us to the Father when he said, I do not pray that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one. You keep them from evil. He didn't pray that we be taken out of the world. So that whole rapture thing, we're going to be raptured up out of here and we're not going to suffer, that is a delusion that many of you are in, that you need to wake up out of, because nobody's getting ready to be raptured up out of here. Just like Prina just got finished saying, the only rapture is going to be FEMA. That's the only rapture you're going to see. When they come and rapture all of us up for keeping his word, because you're going to have to make a choice. But Yeshua prayed in John 17 and 15 to the Father Yah. He said, I do not pray that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from evil. So it is a spiritual watching coupled with praying that is going to give strength and allow us to be able to survive the temptations and the difficult situations, because we know that Satan is a roaring lion. He roars around as a lion, seeking whom he may devour. None of us know when we're going to die. But being spiritually prepared for the end of our life at this time, this should be your top priority, securing your salvation, because we don't know when we're going. We don't know. So the closer we draw to the second coming of our Messiah, which we know is close, and we're going to find out because he talked about what was going to be happening. So it is urgent, as Prina said earlier, that we wake up out of our spiritual sleep. When he says a watch, he ain't talking about, just watch somebody walking by, watch like you watching a fish in a fishbowl. When he said watch, there's action that goes along with watching. Because we got some tough, fearful, end-time events that must happen, and it's time for us to pay attention and be prepared. And the time is now for you to wake up out of your sleep. The time is now for you to be ready. Now, something when I was reading John 17 and 1, in John 17 verse 1, I noticed something. I noticed it said Yeshua lifted up his eyes to the heavens. And it's funny, when he began to pray to the Father, he lifted up his eyes to the heaven. And, when we pray, we've been taught to pray with our heads bowed and our eyes closed. And then some of us, until we learn about this whole circle thing, in a circle, which I stopped at. But we've been taught to pray with our heads bowed and our eyes closed. He looked up. And so in John, I noticed in John 11 and 41, we see again that our Messiah prayed, and as it states, and Yeshua lifted his eyes upward and said, Father, I thank you that you heard me. And we see it again in Mark 7:34, when he was delivering a deaf one who was deaf. He looked up, and it says he looked up to the heavens. Okay. And then finally we read in Psalms 123, verse 1, he said, I will lift up my eyes on you, O dweller in heaven. We know who's the one who dwells in heaven. And so I just kind of noticed that sometimes I know a lot of things, like, I'm always like, why do we do the things we do? Because we know we're coming out of this Babylonian system and way of thinking, and it's kind of like everything that we learn, we have to learn all over again. Like, I just noticed, like, a lot of them in the Bible, like even some of, our forefathers, when they grieved, they spread their arms open to the Most High, hands open wide, looking up, praying. But let's get back to the lesson. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 34 tells us to awake to righteousness and do not sin. So being awake is equated to righteousness and not sinning. And Paul continues in that same verse, saying the following. I'm going to read the whole thing. He says in 1 Corinthians 15:34, he says, awake to righteousness. And I actually did an entire lesson on awake to righteousness, not sin. So if you didn't check that out, you need to, because it was a really good lesson. But it says, awake to righteousness and do not sin. He says, for some have not the knowledge of Yah. He says, and I count that to your shame. So Paul was writing to the church or the assembly at Corinth, and he was addressing that some of them were spiritually dead. And not only having no understanding, and if you know Proverbs 9 and 10, it tells you that knowledge of who Yah is understanding. So that's what knowledge is. Proverbs 9 and 10. Knowledge of who Yah is understanding. So he says, some of you awake, but you're not awake to righteousness. We got a big a movement that's going where Yah is waking up the chosen people all over. But everybody that's awakening is not awakening to righteousness, because now they all up into Egyptology, and some now they don't believe in the New Testament, and some have rejected the Messiah. We all over the place. We all over the place. But he said that some of you have not the knowledge of Yah. You don't know who Yah is. And he says, I count that to your shame. This is what we see going on now. Paul following in Romans chapter 13 and 11. It says, and do this, knowing the time, that now is the time and the hour to awake from your sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than we had first believed. This rings so true today, because our salvation is nearer than ever before. Okay, we are already in Revelations. Like I said earlier, the players is already in place. Everything, the stage is set. We just wait for it to pop off. And he says, knowing the time, you need to be aware of the times that we are in. You worried about Beyonce and Lemonade, and you worry about who with Tamar Braxton, and they got you distract. All these things are distraction. Prince, all of it is just distraction. While you worry about the latest celebrity clone headline, they over here passing all kind of executive orders to make you a slave. You don't have a clue to what's going on. You're supposed to be keeping your eyes on what's going on in these end times, so that we can know where we are and what we're supposed to be doing next according to Scripture. Again, Paul said in Romans 13:11, knowing the time, now is the time and the hour to awake from your sleep, for our salvation is nearer than we first believed. Then he goes on and telling them in verses 12 and 13 to cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. He said, let us walk becomingly, meaning that which is of Yah. That goes back to watching, where it said to be circumspectly, to observe. He says, you should be walking becomingly, that which is of our Father Yah. He says, as in the day, not carousing and drunkenness. You still at the club, you still getting drunk. You're not walking circumspectly. You're not watching. You're still in the world. He says, not in cohabitation and lustful acts, but clothing ourselves with the Master Yeshua, not giving provisions of the flesh and its lust. If you are becoming mature, you should not be still doing the same things that you was doing when you 20, when you 40. You should not be 40 still in the club. I'm sorry. If you still getting drunk, there's something wrong with it. You call yourself a believer. There's something wrong. We don't understand, and Prina and I talked about this week. You don't understand what it means to be set apart. The people in this world think that you can be a part of the world and be set apart at the same time. You can't. You can't. Yeshua's strong warning. And we're going to go to it in Luke. If you can quickly go to Luke chapter 21, verses, 33 through 36. Let me get a little bit of water here. Luke chapter 21, verses 33 through 36. It says, the heaven and the earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away, never. But beware in yourselves, that your hearts never become heavy by extravagances, by drunkenness, and by the distresses of this world. And that day should come suddenly. And I want you to pay attention to this. Excuse me. He says that day should come suddenly upon you as a snare. For it will come in on all those sitting on the face of all the earth. Then be watchful at all times, verse 36. Praying. My verse says begging. Not just praying, but begging that you be counted worthy to escape all the things about to happen and to stand before the Son of Man. So basically what this is saying here, that his word is true. What he said is going to pass. So you need to beware. You need to watch. You need to be on guard. You need to be on the lookout for it. You need to be walking circumspectly. You need to be trying to save your soul. You need to be waiting for. You need to hear, which means to obey while you're waiting, to watch. He says, don't let this day come on you suddenly as a snare, because when this day comes, it's going to be a snare to those that are in the world. Why? Because they have no knowledge of who Yah is. They have a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. They have a form of righteousness, but it's not real. A form of godliness is just words, lip service. Paul said, I don't want to see your words. I want to see your power. I want to see your faith with your words. I need to see it with your power. Where's the evidence? But it says here, then be watchful at all times, praying that you be counted worthy to escape all the things that's getting ready to happen. We're not to be caught off guard like the people that's in the world. That's why he said, this day, don't let this day come on you suddenly as a snare. Like, oh my goodness, I have no, what's happening? When all of this stuff jump off, when this stuff hit the fan soon, very soon, within the next 6 months, the majority of the world, it's going to be a snare to them. They're going to be caught off guard. They're not going to know what to do. They're not going to have a clue what's going on when they cut off the food supply, when this financial system crashes, and it is, and you got to accept a chip in order to be able to buy or sell. They're going to take it because they're going to be afraid. Fear is going to set in. They're going to be trying to save their life, and in the end, they're going to lose it because the true believers are not going to accept the mark because you're going to receive all the plagues, okay, if you accept it. There is no chance. The only place it's going to be for you is going to be for the lake if you accept it. You're going to have to be willing to suffer. But therefore, he says, be watchful at all times, praying that you be counted worthy to escape all the things that are about to happen. We should not be caught off guard like the people in the world. We need to be the ones that know what's in the know what's going on so that we can be directing and taking people back to the word of the Most High, showing them where everything that is happening is part of prophecy. Yeshua's strong warning to his servants, we're going to read in Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 48. It says, let your loins be girded about. I'm reading again, Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 48. Let your loins be girded about. Freedom, if I'm, because you know I'll be having a zillion scriptures. So if I'm giving a wrong scripture at the time, just chime me in. Just chat me while I'm doing this so people can follow me. You know, I have a billion scriptures all over my bed when I'm doing this. But Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 48, it says, let your loins be girded about and the lamps burning. And you be like men awaiting their master. We just got finished reading one of the strong Hebrew definitions for watch is to wait for. He says, and you be waiting for their master when he returns from the wedding ceremony, so that he coming and knocking, they will at once open to him. Verse 37, blessed are those servants whom the master will find when he comes to be awake. He said, blessed are those when he returns, when Yeshua returns. Blessed are those when he comes back. They're awake. They've been keeping his word. They've been walking circumspectly. They hear. They obey. They've been waiting on. It's a lot of people talking about they waiting on Jesus and you waiting on the Messiah. You waiting on him, but are you obeying him? Because if you're not obeying him, you only waiting for your judgment, for him to reject you and tell you, depart from me, I never knew you, you who worketh iniquity. He says, but to be awake, blessed are those servants whom when the master will find when he comes to be awake. Those who are watching. Truly I say to you that he will gird himself and he will make them recline. And coming up, he will serve them. And if he comes in the second watch, or if he comes in the third watch and finds it so, blessed are those slaves or servants. But know this, that if the housemaster had known the hour the thief is coming, he would have watched. And he would not have allowed his house to be dug through. And you then, this is Messiah's command, nevertheless, be ready. For in that moment, you don't expect it. The Son of Man is going to come. So he said, if you left your house and let's say you going out of town, if you got wind of the fact that someone was going to rob your house and clean you out, you wouldn't have left. That's what he's saying. You would have been watching. That's what he expects us to do, to be on guard, watching. Because Satan don't take no breaks. These demons don't take no breaks. His disciples, one of his disciples, Peter, asked him in verse 41, Peter said to him, Master, do you speak this parable to us or also to all? And Yeshua responded in verse 42. Who then is the faithful and wise steward whom the master will set over his house servants to give the portion of food and season? Blessed is the servant when his master comes and will find him doing so. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that servant should say in his heart, my master delays in coming, he should begin to beat the men servants and female servants, and to eat and to drink and to be drunk. The master of that servant will come in a day in which he does not expect, in an hour which he does not know, and he will divide him and will put his portion with the unfaithful. He's calling it, when you are not watching, you're not being watchful, you're not alert, you're awake, that you're not studying. You have no knowledge of who he is. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what his word says. Somebody can come by and tell you something, you believe it. He's counting you when you're not watching. He's telling you he's counting you among the unfaithful. You might as well be an unbeliever. But what is 47 says? But the servant, knowing the will of his master. What is our whole duty, according to Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, to keep his commandments? The servant who knows the will of his master and not preparing. So if you know what Yah's will is, Yeshua's will, and you don't even prepare, he said, nor doing according to his will. So if you know what to do and you're not even preparing, we're supposed to be preparing right now. We're preparing for our judgment right now before we die. Once you die, then judgment comes right after that. Judgment comes right after you die. We're preparing right now for what your judgment is going to be. Again, you don't know when you're going to take your last breath. You're preparing now. But he says, the servant that knows the will, if you know my will and you don't even prepare, you're not studying, you being lazy, you're not gathering, you're not trying to learn to find out what my will is, you're not interested, you turn your ear away from hearing my law, you tell people that my law is done away with when I said think not that I came to do away with it. You know what my will is, and he said you're not even preparing. He said study to show yourself approved unto Yah, a workman needeth not being ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Study to show yourself approved unto Yah, a workman needed not being ashamed. We read earlier what Paul said, some of you don't know who Yah is. He says, and I count that to your shame. You should be ashamed of yourself. He said, I blame you for that. You don't know who Yah is. You don't know the will of Yah. He says, you have no knowledge of who Yah is. He says, and I count that to your shame. That's the same thing that happens when you don't study to show yourself approved. He says, then you're a workman, neither not being ashamed. Y'all say you don't have to be ashamed for not knowing who I am. When you study, not talking about what pastor said. You can't get into the kingdom on pastor's merit. You got to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. That's a part of watching. I just read it. If you wrote all the numbers down, that studying to show yourself approved and working out your own salvation with fear and trembling is a part of watching. When I'm working, I'm concerned about my salvation. I'm concerned about where my soul goes. So therefore, I'm going to watch. Watch how I act. Watch how I speak. Watch how I treat the people of Yah. Watch how I live my life. Because all of those things are going to set up my judgment when my soul does depart and leave this body. Death is not the end. When you die, your soul goes to a place. You're supposed to be preparing for where your soul is going to go now. You can't prepare for where your soul is going to go once your soul leaves your body. It's too late. We're supposed to be preparing now. Our Ezra 7 and 10 is the scripture for this entire teaching ministry. Ezra set his heart. He prepared his heart to do the Torah of Yah, to learn it, to do it, to teach it. Are you preparing your heart? What are you doing with the time? Are you wasting time watching reality TV, watching sports, and you haven't even gotten in the Word? You know all the latest gossip on all the celebrities. You know who broke up. You know who got divorced. It's good to know all that. If you know all of that, but you don't know the Word, but you know all of that. You know who coming up in the draft. You have knowledge of worldly things, but you have no knowledge of who Yah is. He says, I count it to your shame. You're not preparing. Yeshua said the servant who knows the will, meaning you know what he expects from you, but you're too lazy to do it. You're not preparing, nor you're doing according to his will. He says that you are going to be beaten. I'm continuing in reading. I'm in verse 47. He said you're going to be beaten with many stripes. You're going to be beaten with more stripes if you know the truth and you know what to do and you're not doing it and you're not even preparing yourself. He says you're going to be beat with many stripes. 48. But he who does not know, so this is the one that does not know and does the thing that is worthy of stripes. So you don't know, but it's still worthy of stripes. He said you're going to be beaten with fewer stripes, but you're still going to be beat. He said, for anyone who is given much to him, much is required from him. And to he whom they have committed much to him, much more will be required by his hand. So that's why I don't take this gift and that which he has commissioned me to do, which is to teach his people. I didn't ask to be a teacher. I'm a teacher by profession, but I'm talking about doing this, what I do. I didn't ask to be a teacher. I thought I was going to get out of it, but that was not what his will was. He told me, I will counsel you and give you the knowledge of truth so that you can teach the truth to those that I send to you. I don't have any control over it. I have to do what he told me to do, period. And I have to be careful of what I bring to you. I want to read this from a different Bible. I was reading Bible study, a study Bible. I'm going to read Luke 12, 35 through 48. Same thing. I'm just reading a different version. It says, verse 35, be dressed for service. The other thing goes, be dressed for service. What service is he talking about? He's talking about the wedding of the Messiah. He says, be dressed for the service and keep your lamp burning. We're going to talk about that when we get to the foolish version, about the lamp. He says, be dressed. He didn't say go to the mall and look for the clothes. He said be dressed already. So when I come, you ready. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. He said keep your lamp. The youth will be like servants waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet so that when he comes and knocks, they can open the door for him at once. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds on watch when he returns. I love the way this is reading. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds on watch. That was one of the words, watch. The one is on watch when he returns. Blessed are you if you on watch when he returns. And I'm not talking about standing there looking out the window waiting for somebody to knock on the door. That's not what he's talking about. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve and will have them recline at that table. And he himself will come and wait on them, even if he comes in the second or third watch of the night and finds them alert. There's another word for watch, finding them alert. Those servants will be blessed. But understand this, if the homeowner had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have left his house so that it could be broken into. 40. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour you do not expect. He's going to come at an hour we don't even expect. Peter asks in verse 41, Master, are you addressing this parable to us or to everyone else as well? And Yeshua answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their portion at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master finds doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But suppose that servant says in his heart, my master will be a long time coming. See, this is what people think. It's like I put up a post last week. People think they got all the time in the world to get right with Yah. You don't. He says, suppose that servant says in his heart, my master will be a long time in coming. And he begins to beat the male and female servants and to eat and drink and get drunk. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him and at an hour of which he is unaware. Then he will cut him to pieces and assign him to a place with the unbelievers. We know where the unbelievers are going, to the lake of fire. That servant who knows his master's will, read again, that servant who knows his master's will but does not get ready or follow his instructions. See, this is what I wanted to get to. See, people think watching is just looking at something. He's meaning watch in the spiritual sense of action. He said, the servant who knows his master's will but does not get ready and follow his instructions. That means to obey. To obey and to hear, that was one of the words, strong Hebrews word for watch. He who does not get ready and follow his instructions will be beaten with many blows. But the one who unknowingly does things worthy of punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from him who has been entrusted with much, even more will be demanded. So that's why I take this so serious. We have to be mindful of the times that we are in. We got to be on guard, alert, watching, and waiting in obedience for the return of our Messiah. Quickly go to Matthew chapter 24, and we're going to read verses 1 through 42. And we're almost done because this lesson was not long today. But Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 through 42 reads, and Yeshua is basically giving his disciples the signs of the end times and the sign of his return. And we should be applying this to now for things that we need to be looking for. Matthew 24, verse 1. And going out, Yeshua left the sanctuary, and his disciples came to show him the construction of the sanctuary. But Yeshua said to them, do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, there will not at all be left one stone on a stone which in no way will not be thrown down. And as he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? What is the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So the disciples, they want to know, okay, what signs can we look for? What's going to be happening in the end time that's going to let us know that you're on your way, that in these last days? And Yeshua answers them in verse 4, saying, here he begins with a warning. He says, see that no man deceives you. That's the same thing as saying beware, watch, be watchful, be on guard, protect. When you're trying to protect someone, you watching. You making sure that your loved one doesn't get hurt and no one hurts them, that they're safe. So he says, see that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Messiah, and they will cause many to be deceived. For you are bound to hear of revolutions and rumors of wars. We already hearing that. He says, watch out and do not be disturbed. So he says, watch, but don't be disturbed. He says, why? Because it is necessary that all these things happen. He's telling us, don't be caught off guard like those that's in the world. When all this stuff jump off, we're not supposed to be caught off guard because we already know what his word says because we study. We have knowledge of who Yah is. We know what he has told us. He's already telling us what's going to happen, what you can expect. So don't be caught off guard when they come with this martial law and say, don't be caught off guard when they throw you in prison because you refuse to eat pork, because you refuse to take the chip, because you refuse to vaccinate your kids. They get ready to make all these laws mandatory. All the laws that Yah says is an abomination that will send you straight to hell. Are you going to still do it so that you can save your life? Because if you do, you're going to lose it in the end. You better be willing to lay your life down like Yeshua did for you so that you can have everlasting life. They can only kill your body. They can't take your soul because your soul goes back to Yah. And you're preparing judgment right now on where you're going to go based on what you do. That's why he said you have to endure to the end to be saved. That's what the good news is. There's a coming kingdom, and it is going to be a destruction of this one. But you got to endure to the end. No matter what, you got to stand. Because you can lose your salvation. You can lose it at any time. How you die is how you stand before him. But he says, watch out and do not be disturbed, for it is necessary that all these things happen. This has to happen. He said, but it is not yet the end. Verse 7, for nations, because he was talking to them, it wasn't yet the end. He says, for nation will be raised against nation. Nation's going to rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, plagues, earthquakes. We've seen this already. We've been seeing it in many places. Verse 8, but all these are the beginning of sorrow. So we've already surpassed the beginnings of sorrow. Then they will deliver you up to affliction, and you will be killed. He's telling you, if the rapture is the word of Yah, why is he not telling you you're going to be raptured up out of here and nothing is going to happen to you? Why is he not telling you that? He's not telling you that because that's not what his word says. He said that they're going to afflict you and they're going to deliver you up, and he said they're going to kill you. He said you're going to be hated by all nations because of my name's sake. They're going to hate you. They're going to hate that name, Yeshua. They're going to hate the fact that you stand for a marriage as a man and a woman the way that he told us that it was in Genesis 3, 5, and 6. They're going to hate everything about you. They already hate us. But he says, you will be hated by all nations because of my name's sake. And then many will be offended. They will deliver up one another, and they will hate one another. And many false prophets, verse 11, and many false prophets will be raised and will deceive many. And because lawlessness shall have been multiplied, the love of many will grow.
Shatai? Shatai, I can't hear you. Shatai, I still don't hear you. Shatai? Shatai? Shadai, can you hear me? Shatan, can you hear me?